Okay, let's unpack this. We are tackling a subject that I think is often viewed as a singular goal.
Right. Just stop using substances. End of story.
Exactly. But the sources we've compiled for this deep dive, they treat recovery not as a single finish line, but as a really detailed, multi-layered roadmap.
For a total life redesign, really.
That's it. So the core mission here, the one the experts all agree on, is that simply stopping is only the entry point.
It's just the beginning. The real mission is fundamentally changing your life, your core operating system, to make sure that recovery actually sticks.
And that's the critical distinction.
It is. It's why this is so valuable for you, the listener. If you're in therapy or counseling or any kind of support program, the mission is active, not passive.
You're not just waiting for the treatment to, fix you.
Exactly. It's about your commitment, your attitude, and your rigorous active participation. What the clinical sources relentlessly emphasize is that successful treatment isn't measured by the type of therapy you get. It's measured by how much it helps you develop and constantly improve the skills you need.
The cognitive, the behavioral skills.
And the interpersonal skills, yeah. To manage the constant challenges that recovery throws at you.
So we're going to distill this down into two massive areas for you.
Okay.
First, we're looking at the immediate, critical, and, let's be honest, often very uncomfortable attitudes and behaviors you need to really maximize treatment.
And how to avoid self-sabotage. That's a huge piece of it.
A huge piece, like walking away when things get tough. Second, we're going to map out the comprehensive dimensions of a sustainable recovery path.
Moving beyond just, measuring clean time.
Right, to define success in a much more holistic way.
And before we jump in, here's a little nugget that I think frames this whole discussion perfectly.
Okay, I'm ready.
If you look at the 12 steps, from AA or NA, only the very first step even mentions alcohol or addiction directly.
Just the first one.
Just step one. The other 11 steps, they address you, the person.
Personal inventory, making amends, all that.
Exactly. Character repair, spiritual growth. It's this recognition that the problem is rooted in the self, not just the substance.
And that's the cornerstone of everything we're about to discuss.
It really is.
All right, let's start with the absolute foundation. If you're serious about treatment, the sources are crystal clear. Your mindset has to shift.
Immediately, from defensiveness to vulnerability.
And the first, and maybe the most difficult shift, is embracing what the experts call radical honesty. Why is this mandatory? Why isn't it optional?
It's mandatory because, honesty is the only tool that lets the clinical process actually work.
How so?
Your physician, your therapist, your counselor. They can't develop an accurate assessment or recommend the right recovery plan without a true picture of your history.
The unvarnished picture.
The unvarnished, ugly truth. If you minimize how much you used, or you omit the bad consequences, or lie about your mental state.
The whole plan is built on a faulty foundation.
Exactly. The assessment will be flawed, and the treatment plan will be aimed at the wrong target. It's like giving a surgeon a blurry X-ray.
I can only imagine the shame makes that radical honesty just incredibly difficult. The instinct has to be to hide the worst parts.
That's the barrier. The shame drives the secrecy. But the rule here is crucial, and it's not just about the past. It's about the present.
No secret.
No secrets. And this applies especially to the things that feel acutely embarrassing or might make you look bad.
Like what, specifically?
We're talking about actual episodes of use a slip, a full-blown relapse, even close calls where you were tempted and almost gave in.
Or putting yourself in a high-risk situation.
Yes. Or even just admitting that you're struggling with your motivation to stay in the program.
So if you're listening and struggling right now, what's the core assurance that needs to override that fear of being judged?
The sources are so emphatic on this point. Your counselor is there to help you, not to judge you, and definitely not to punish you.
They've heard it all before.
They have heard it all. And hiding these struggles, especially concealing a slip, is the ultimate form of self-sabotage.
Because they can't help you with a problem they don't know you have.
Right. It prevents the team from adjusting your plan when you need help the most, and it just destroys the therapeutic relationship.
So the goal is to build that trust.
A strong, trusting relationship. That means sharing everything, what bothers you, what's going well.
Even what you don't like about the therapy itself.
Especially that. If you aren't honest about your current cravings, the counselor can't deploy the defenses you need.
Which means you've fundamentally misunderstood your role. You're the CEO of your recovery, not just a passenger.
That's a great way to put it. And that honesty has to extend to the next requirement. Commitment, time, and the pace of change.
Ah, the quick fix mentality.
So many people go into treatment expecting a quick fix, but that's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what a substance use disorder is.
So let's talk about duration. What does the data say about how long you need to stay in treatment to get the most out of it?
The finding is really clear. Treatment is effective only to the extent that you stay long enough to benefit.
And long enough varies.
It's highly variable. For less severe problems, maybe short-term outpatient, like 12 sessions or fewer, might be enough to get the skills you need.
But that's the exception.
That is definitely the exception, not the rule.
So for the more serious entrenched SUDs,
The time commitment just skyrockets. More severe SUDs are chronic conditions, like diabetes,
they need ongoing management.
ongoing. They often require longer outpatient involvement, maybe 6 months to a year of weekly sessions, or they need to be preceded by detox or a residential program that lasts for weeks or months.
And even after that.
Sustained success often requires long-term involvement, sometimes for years, in mutual support programs. We're talking about fundamentally rewiring habits, thought processes, and neurochemistry.
Which just takes time, a lot of time and repetition.
It does. And if recovery is gradual, we have to talk about the emotional side of it. The sources are very upfront that it's often gradual and painful.
It's not a comfortable journey.
No. It's intensely uncomfortable, especially in the early stages.
Why is that?
Because recovery forces you to take an open, honest look at how your substance use affected you and everyone around you.
And that self-examination is designed to bring up some really strong negative feelings.
It is. You have to face the guilt over past actions, the shame about feeling defective or weak, anger, disappointment in yourself. Trying to rush past that or numb it, it prevents real healing.
So sitting with that discomfort, that emotional pain, is basically the cost of entry for self-improvement.
It is. The sources stress that you have to endure that initial pain. But the promise, and this is critical, is that as you make progress and actively make changes,
Repairing relationships, trying new behaviors.
exactly, as you do that, the intensity of that pain decreases significantly. You replace the acute, destructive pain of guilt with the constructive, manageable discomfort of growth.
Okay, let's pivot to the clinical strategies that support this. Let's start with the goal of abstinence and medication-assisted treatment, or LIMIT.
For more severe SUDs, the primary clinical goal is still abstinence.
And the reason for that is pragmatic.
Very pragmatic. If you keep using any substance, it just significantly raises the risk of transferring that addiction to something else, maybe a legal or prescribed substance, or accumulating new addictions over time.
And this view is consistent, right, across clinical and mutual support communities.
It is. The mutual support literature, like the NA basic text, is very clear. They say they could not successfully use any mind-altering or mood-changing substance.
They see the danger in justifying a legal prescription if it affects your mood.
They do. And AA literature advises avoiding chemical mood changers. The philosophy is sound. The work is about developing internal coping skills, not using external chemicals to manage discomfort.
But, and this is a huge but, the sources provide a crucial life-saving exception.
Absolutely. The exception is medical necessity.
Meaning
There are times when medications that have addictive potential are genuinely necessary to treat legitimate medical or psychiatric conditions,
like chronic pain or severe anxiety.
or debilitating sleep issues. In those cases, the risk of the untreated medical or psychiatric illness is way worse than the risk of the medication.
But it has to be managed carefully.
Tightly managed by a medical professional who knows your full SUD history.
And that leads us right to MAT, medication-assisted treatment, which is a tool, not a crutch.
That's exactly the right way to frame it. MAT is a vital tool in the recovery toolbox.
Used for withdrawal and for ongoing recovery.
For both. It's primarily for opioid, alcohol, or nicotine use disorders. And if you're struggling to stay stable with therapy alone, you should proactively ask your counselor for a medication evaluation.
It's a sign of maturity to use all the tools available.
It is.
Okay, for the listener who wants to go a bit deeper, can we unpack the actual clinical mechanism of some of these MATs? The simple list felt a little dry.
Of course. Let's start with opioid use disorder. There are 3 main classes listed.
Methadone and buprenorphine.
Right. Methadone and buprenorphine, which is in drugs like Suboxone, they work similarly. They're agonists, meaning they activate the opioid receptors.
Okay.
But, and this is key, buprenorphine is a partial agonist.
What does that mean in practice?
It means it satisfies the cravings and prevents the agony of withdrawal so you can stabilize and focus on therapy. But because it only partially activates the receptor, it has a ceiling effect.
So less risk of overdose or misuse.
Much less risk. It basically blocks the craving without providing a full-on euphoric high.
It manages the physical need and stabilizes you. So what about naltrexone?
Naltrexone, which you might know as Revia or Vivitrol, is an antagonist.
The opposite.
The opposite. It works by completely blocking the opioid receptor. So if you take an opioid while you're on naltrexone, you won't get high.
It breaks the reward cycle.
It completely eliminates the reward mechanism. And the beauty of naltrexone is that it also works for alcohol use disorder.
Wait, how does it help with alcohol? That's not an opioid.
Right. But when you drink heavily, your brain releases its own opioids, endorphins, which contributes to that rewarding feeling. By blocking those receptors, naltrexone reduces that euphoric effect. It makes alcohol less rewarding and helps cut down on heavy drinking and cravings.
Interesting. And the sources also mention a couple of others for alcohol.
They do. Acamprosate, or Camprol, helps with the long-term symptoms after withdrawal, like anxiety and restlessness.
And the famous one, antabuse.
Disulfiram, or antabuse, that one creates a really unpleasant physical reaction, like nausea and vomiting, if you drink alcohol. It's a very strong deterrent.
So this all confirms that recovery is a demanding, multifaceted effort. It's the right mindset, a long-term commitment, and the right clinical tools when you need them.
All working together.
Now we have to move to the internal enemy, the behaviors that actively work against your own success.
Self-sabotage.
And the sources highlight one of the most destructive acts, dropping out early. Specifically, leaving against medical advice, or AMA. Why is that temptation to quit so powerful right when treatment is starting to work?
The sources explain that the reasons people give for quitting are almost always smokescreens.
What kind of excuses?
The typical complaints. I don't like the staff's tone, or I hate the food here, or the medicine is making me feel anxious.
Or the classic, I have urgent business, I need to get back to my job.
Exactly. They're all rationalizations that blame the desire to quit on some external factor.
So let's define the real enemy here. The sources call it covert craving. How does that actually show up?
Covert craving it's basically the addiction fighting back, but it's cloaked in what seems like rational thought.
I see.
The real underlying reason is almost always a powerful, often subconscious desire to use again. Or it's a sudden, severe drop in motivation, because recovery is just harder than you thought it would be.
And this happens because the addiction pathways in the brain are being challenged.
For the first time, yeah. And they send these powerful, distorted signals. A perfect example is the thought, this treatment is actually making me more stressed.
I need to leave to fix my job so I can relax.
Right. But the subconscious intent is to create a stressful environment that justifies relapse.
Wow. The addiction uses the language of responsibility to rationalize irresponsible behavior. That's fascinating. And the danger of quitting early is enormous.
It's huge. The data is unequivocal. Leaving AMA or quitting treatment early significantly raises your risk of immediate relapse.
You're stepping out of the safe zone right when you're most vulnerable.
Exactly.
So what's the best clinical defense against this? How do you fight it?
The initial defense is acceptance.
Accepting what?
Accepting that addiction is a chronic illness and trusting that the treatment team knows what's in your long-term best interest, even if it feels awful right now.
But what if that intense desire to leave, that urge, that covert craving just pops up anyway? What's the practical, in-the-moment action plan?
The plan is simple, but it requires immediate and sometimes painful action. Just don't do it.
Don't act on the impulse.
Put an absolute moratorium on acting on the impulse to quit. Instead, you have to immediately put that desire into words.
Talk about it.
Talk to your counselor, a nurse, your sponsor, anyone you trust, right away. The act of openly discussing the desire to quit reduces its power. It gives you an external view and stops that destructive impulse from controlling your decision.
Okay, that brings us to a more formal list of the subtle ways people sabotage their progress long before they decide to quit.
The checklist of therapy sabotage.
Let's go through it, starting with attendance and compliance issues.
These are the obvious behavioral failures. Not showing up on time, skipping sessions, dropping out after a few meetings.
But it's also not doing the work between sessions.
Yes. Failing to complete assignments like journaling, reading, or the behavioral tasks. If you don't do the homework, you aren't integrating the skills into your actual life.
The second category is relationship and attitude issues. This is where you stop seeing the process as a collaboration.
Right. It shows up as the blame game. Blaming the counselor for not helping enough, expecting them to solve all your problems.
Or demanding they tell you what to talk about.
which shows a failure to take ownership. But critically, it also involves not opening up, not sharing your real thoughts and feelings. If you hide your inner world, the treatment can't possibly be tailored to your actual needs.
You're basically treating the expert like a mechanic. You drop off the broken car and expect to pick it up fixed instead of learning how to drive differently.
That's a perfect analogy. The third category is high-risk behavior under relapse risk issues.
This involves direct dishonesty.
Like not telling your counselor when you feel like using, or if you actually have used. But it's also subtle stuff, placing unrealistic demands on the care team, not taking your prescribed meds properly, or, and this is a very common one, deliberately putting yourself back into high-risk environments.
A toxic relationship, a bar.
All conscious or subconscious actions that are basically inviting relapse.
And finally, the big one, responsibility issues. This is about who ultimately owns the outcome.
This is the failure to accept responsibility for things you actually have control over. The classic example is blaming others for your choices.
My spouse made me so angry I had to drink.
Instead of recognizing that the failure was in choosing not to use the coping skills you've been learning for that exact situation, recovery requires owning all your decisions. If you're constantly looking for who's at fault, you give up your power to change.
Identifying these patterns is the first step to reclaiming that power.
It has to be.
Okay, moving from the internal mindset to the external network. Recovery is always described as a we effort. This underscores the importance of support and accountability. Why is building that network so critical for survival?
Well, substance use disorder is a profoundly isolating experience. It destroys healthy social networks, or it forces you to only interact with other people who use.
So recovery demands the opposite.
You have to actively work with your counselor to identify new, supportive, sober sources of support, family, friends, peers in recovery. You need a large, diverse network to lean on.
You can't just rely on willpower alone.
You can't. You need that external buffer of accountability and support.
But we know that asking for help is one of the hardest things for people to do. What are the common blocks, and how do you get past them?
The sources point to the classic barriers. Pride, which equates needing help with weakness. Fear of rejection or judgment. Deep embarrassment. Or just a total lack of practice in saying what you need.
So how does this shift happen?
It happens when you finally realize that recovery is a we effort, not some heroic I effort. That psychological shift gives you permission to reach out for specific support.
Whether it's a ride to a meeting or just someone to listen.
Exactly. Advice on a work issue or just someone to listen to your anxiety without trying to fix it.
So for a listener who really struggles with making that request, what are the actionable steps to practice asking for help?
The sources outline a clear strategy. First, you have to face your fears and understand that vulnerability is strength, not weakness.
Okay.
Second, maintain a list of reliable people and their contact info so you can act fast when you need to. Third, share your concerns with one or two confidants regularly, not just in a crisis.
Get in the habit of it.
Yes. And finally, be direct and specific. Don't just vaguely say, I'm having a hard time.
Say what you need.
Say, I need advice on managing my finances this week, or I need you to sit with me for 10 minutes while I talk about my anxiety. Specificity makes it so much easier for people to help you.
This all naturally leads to regular participation in mutual support groups like AA or NA. Beyond the spiritual part, what's the functional, clinical value of showing up regularly?
The function is pure accountability and validation. It's critical, especially in early recovery, because you're sharing your problems with people who have successfully navigated the exact same terrain.
They get it in a way no one else can.
They get it. When you share openly, say, you disclose a strong craving or admit your motivation is low, the group helps you process that feeling and figure out how to stay sober. They can offer advice specific to your job, your city, your family situation.
It's that non-judgmental environment.
It's an unparalleled resource for accountability and encouragement that formal treatment by itself just can't replicate.
All right, we've established how to manage the clinical part. Now let's zoom out and define the ultimate prize. What is recovery? We're turning to the framework from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, which sees recovery not as just compliance, but as personal empowerment.
And their definition is transformative. They define recovery as a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential.
That reframes everything. It's not just about recovering from something.
You're recovering to something. To a self-directed, fulfilling life.
And that ambitious scope is captured in Sam HSA's 4 major dimensions of recovery. This gives us structure for what success actually looks like.
It does. These are the aims that structure the whole path forward,
First is health.
which is the baseline. Managing the disease, it means abstaining from illicit substances, but it also means actively making healthy choices, like getting regular medical care and managing stress.
Second,
Stability, just having a stable and safe place to live. Without reliable shelter, all other recovery efforts are constantly at risk.
third is purpose.
This is more than just a job. It's about engaging in meaningful activities.
I'd be a job, school, family.
Volunteering. It's about having the resources, financial and emotional, to participate in the world around you.
And fourth, community.
The external buffer. Having supportive relationships and social networks that provide the essentials of human connection. Support, friendship, love, and hope.
It's a powerful map. You have to address the disease, your environment, your daily activity, and your relationships all at once.
You do.
The sources also outline the 10 guiding principles of recovery, which are the philosophical framework for all this.
Yeah, these principles were developed by Sam HSA, and they deliberately emphasize that recovery is a collaborative we effort.
It involves the individual, family, peers, and the community.
All of them. It's designed to empower you while underscoring that you need external support.
So let's look at how these principles interact, starting with the psychological engine of it all.
We begin with hope. Recovery emerges from the internal belief that a better future is not just possible, but it's achievable.
And that feeds into being person-driven.
Exactly. You have to be the author of your own journey. You develop your own goals, choose your own path. Professionals offer guidance, but the direction belongs to you.
I found the principle of multiple pathways to be crucial. It pushes back against the idea that there's only one way to succeed.
It's probably the most modern and necessary principle. It confirms that recovery can happen in many ways,
CBT, MATO, 12-step programs.
or alternatives like smart recovery, faith-based programs, family support, even recovery apps. There is no single mandatory path. You have to find what resonates with you.
And the scope of the change is reinforced by the principle of being holistic.
Yes, this means recovery has to address your mind, body, spirit, and community all at the same time. You can't isolate one problem area.
And that's tied to peer support.
And strong relationships. They are the glue. They provide hope and encouragement.
There are also principles that deal with context, recognizing that recovery doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right. That's where cultural-based recovery comes in, acknowledging that your values and traditions shape your unique path. And critically, trauma-informed recovery.
Addressing past trauma in a safe environment.
Yes, recovery programs have to be sensitive to the pervasive role trauma plays in addiction.
And finally, what about ownership and community inclusion?
That falls under strengths and responsibility. The community has to provide resources, but you have to accept responsibility for your choices.
And all of this is built on respect.
Meaning society has to move past stigma and accept and appreciate people affected by SEDs. The recovery community should be celebrated, not shunned.
So it's clear recovery is this vast undertaking. What are the key elements that experts say most strongly influence whether someone has a positive outcome?
The sources list 5 main factors that define your trajectory. 1, the initial severity of the substance use and the problems it caused. 2, your motivation level. And crucially, your ability to manage the dips in that motivation.
It's not a constant.
Not at all. 3, your internal psychological resources. This is critical. Insight, resilience, your capacity to tolerate distress, your ability to delay gratification for long-term goals.
Skills that recovery tries to build.
Exactly. 4, the quality of your interpersonal relationships and your external support system. And 5, the presence and severity of any comorbidity.
Meaning other medical or psychiatric problems like depression or anxiety.
Right. Unmanaged co-occurring disorders will absolutely undermine your recovery efforts.
So with that holistic definition in place, let's shift to the practical framework for change. Recovery requires setting specific actionable goals across all these domains of life. We have to start with the most immediate one, physical recovery, getting and staying healthy.
Physical recovery has 2 sequential goals. The immediate non-negotiable one is getting alcohol or drug-free.
Once that stability is there.
The focus moves to wellness goals. Stopping substance use is a huge opportunity to fundamentally clean up your health profile.
What are the components of those wellness goals?
They include aggressively taking care of any medical or dental problems that came from or were worsened by your use. But the real work is lifestyle management.
A balanced diet, enough sleep.
Rest, relaxation to reduce stress, and regular exercise. Managing physical cravings is also key, often with the help of Matt.
And there's a direct feedback loop here, right?
A direct one. Poor physical health increases psychological distress, which increases the likelihood of relapse. The more rested and nourished you are, the more cognitive resources you have to resist temptation.
Next up is emotional or psychological recovery, the inner landscape. This is where the heavy lifting happens.
It is foundational. It involves accepting the SUD, committing to change, and developing strategies for working through those unavoidable periods of low motivation.
And a major focus here is challenging negative thinking.
Or what mutual support groups famously call stinking thinking.
Can we elaborate on that? What does stinking thinking mean in clinical terms? Give me some examples of these cognitive distortions.
Absolutely. Stinking thinking is basically a set of cognitive distortions that rationalize or minimize or amplify negative feelings to make substance use seem like the only option.
Like all or nothing thinking.
Yes. I had one slip, so the whole program is ruined. I might as well go back to using completely.
We're catastrophizing.
Blowing minor things way out of proportion. My boss criticized my report. This means I'm going to fail, lose my job, and end up homeless. The anxiety from that distorted fear becomes overwhelming.
Driving the desire to self-medicate.
And then there's minimization, downplaying the consequences. It wasn't that bad. I only missed a few days of work.
So the goal of emotional recovery is replacing that distorted thinking with rational thought.
And developing new coping mechanisms for stress and trauma.
On the subject of trauma, the sources give very specific advice about when to tackle that deep-seated work. Why is the timing so critical?
This is a crucial, high-stakes clinical decision. Generally, experts advise waiting until you have a substantial period of sobriety, at least several months, before you try to deal with the deep emotional impacts of trauma.
Why is that? What's the risk?
The risk is profound. Trying to process severe trauma too early, before your brain has stabilized and before you've developed robust coping skills, it can be profoundly destabilizing.
It can trigger the very things you're trying to escape.
It can trigger severe distress, anxiety, flashbacks, which creates overwhelming pressure to relapse just to numb that pain. Stability has to come before deep emotional exploration.
So the lack of basic coping skills makes early trauma work just too dangerous.
Exactly. Your brain needs time to heal from the chemical chaos of addiction first. But the sources do acknowledge specific exceptions where you have to intervene immediately.
What are those primary exceptions?
First is immediate safety. If you are currently in an unsafe, abusive relationship, you have to work with your counselor to develop a safety plan and find secure housing. That overrides the sobriety timeline.
Safety first.
Always. Second, if there are severe psychiatric symptoms, intense, unmanageable distress, active suicidal ideation, psychosis, those have to be addressed immediately by a mental health professional, regardless of your clean time.
Okay, the third domain is re-engaging with the world. Family and social recovery. This is where the consequences of past behavior are confronted.
And since SEDs invariably cause relational damage, your recovery plan has to involve assessing that impact and actively working to improve communication.
Involving the family in therapy, education groups.
Or open AA meetings. It's also crucial to encourage family members to seek their own support through groups like Al-Anon or Nar-Anon. They need their own recovery.
We mentioned that looking at the damage done can bring up guilt and shame. How do you make sure that doesn't become another trigger?
That's where the focus on action over emotion comes in. Yes, the guilt and shame will be temporarily intense, but the act of making amends, taking responsibility, and actively working to communicate better, that replaces the painful emotion with constructive self-respect.
The long-term reward is stronger family ties based on earned trust.
It is.
And shifting to the broader social sphere, what are the goals for interpersonal recovery?
The key goals are establishing relationships with sober people and proactively expanding that support system.
And learning how to say no.
This is where you learn and practice assertive refusal skills to decline offers to use. It's a critical, repeatable skill. It also involves making amends to people you've harmed.
And for someone who relied on substances to have fun, developing new leisure activities must be a massive hurdle.
It is huge. The sources emphasize the need to develop healthy, enjoyable leisure activities to replace the time you used to spend using.
Learning to have fun again.
Learning to have fun again. Finding enjoyment in sober activities like hobbies, sports, creative pursuits, and also engaging in community activities that have nothing to do with recovery.
Like volunteering or taking a class.
It helps seamlessly integrate you back into mainstream society.
Let's move to the more abstract but vital domains, starting with spiritual recovery. This is often misconstrued as only meaning formal religion.
Spiritual recovery, in the clinical sense, is about overcoming the deepest psychological damage of addiction. Shame, that feeling that you're intrinsically defective and deep-seated guilt about past actions.
The goal is to develop an internal sense of meaning and purpose.
A sense of meaning, connection, and purpose that transcends the day-to-day struggle.
So what are the pathways to that for people who reject the idea of a higher power?
For those who embrace the 12 steps, it often involves relying on a higher power, however they define it. For others, spiritual recovery is entirely secular.
What would that look like?
Alternative pathways could be an intense focus on mindfulness and meditation, connecting with nature, pursuing ethical values, or finding meaning through service giving back to others,
It's about feeling connected to something larger than yourself.
which reduces that overwhelming sense of isolation.
Finally, we have the crucial other domains, the functional requirements of life.
These are the practical areas that always suffer collateral damage. It includes setting goals for education, career growth, hobbies, resolving legal issues, and crucially, improving your financial health.
Getting a handle on money.
Paying bills on time, reducing debt, starting to save. It's a common and powerful marker of stability. Financial anxiety is a huge relapse trigger, so managing these domains builds a crucial layer of defense.
This is a tremendous list of goals, covering everything from sleep to spirituality. How does anyone prioritize all this without getting completely overwhelmed?
This is where goal prioritization is essential. And the sources provide a golden rule that you cannot ignore.
Which is?
You must work on the most pressing, early recovery issues first. Ignoring immediate issues, like managing cravings, to focus on later, complex issues, like relationship repair, fundamentally sabotages the whole process.
Let's use that concrete example of Darren to illustrate this.
Right. So Darren, like many people, had severely damaged family relationships. Those were high-priority, late recovery issues.
But his first priority had to be something else.
His first clinical priority had to be sustaining abstinence and learning to manage his constant, overwhelming cravings. Those are critical early recovery issues.
Stability first.
Only after he stabilized, developed distress tolerance, and got a few months of clean time was he in the psychological shape to begin the difficult work of repairing those relationships.
Trying to fix his marriage while battling daily cravings would have failed.
It would have failed both efforts. Stability first, then advanced repair.
So what if total abstinence, that initial goal, just feels impossibly distant right now? Someone might feel paralyzed, thinking if they can't do the whole thing, why even start?
That paralysis is so dangerous. The experts advise that if total abstinence can't be the initial goal, maybe they're in a harm reduction model or just uncertain, then you should identify any single small step toward change.
Rather than doing nothing.
Anything is better than nothing. It's okay to admit you're uncertain about stopping completely, but the process has to start. Even just admitting that uncertainty to a counselor or cutting back slightly.
It keeps the door open.
It keeps that crucial ultimate decision to stop completely open for later. Doing something, however small, is always better than doing nothing.
So this deep dive has shown us that maximizing treatment effectiveness is less about the clinic and really more about the client. Recovery is an active, demanding process. It's driven by radical honesty, a long-term time commitment, and accepting that there will be pain.
And success is achieved by staying in treatment long enough to truly benefit.
And then applying those lessons across a holistic plan that rebuilds your physical, emotional, social, and spiritual life.
That's the ultimate synthesis. The central theme across all this material is that recovery is fundamentally about developing coping skills.
Cognitive, behavioral, interpersonal.
All of them. To manage the chronic, inescapable life challenges like cravings, resisting pressure, navigating conflict, handling upsetting emotions.
The failure isn't in facing the difficulty.
The failure is in failing to apply the skills you've learned. Success is highly personalized. It's measured relative to your individual problems and goals, not as some all-or-nothing failure against an external standard.
It truly is a we effort. It's supported and sustained by peers, family, professionals, making sure you don't have to navigate that incredibly challenging path alone.
Yet the work of change, the changing of ingrained thought patterns, handling raw emotions, following through on assignments, that work is intensely, relentlessly personal. So if the ultimate goal of recovery, as Sam Aisha defines it, is to live a self-directed life and strive to reach your full potential, we'll leave you with this provocative thought.
Okay.
What single step toward change, however small, could you commit to taking today to seize that self-direction and truly begin building your own unique recovery path? That is the immediate challenge that opens the door to lasting transformation.